Black people, stay away from white women. No, that's not the newest press release from the folks down at American Renaissance, who I think they're having a national convention this week. Where, in Tennessee? No, that comes from Michael Harriot. Michael's a reporter and a writer for The Root. Anybody remember The Root? Founded by the Washington Post. It's a place for black voices. And since they founded it, it pretty much turned into the official Washington area center for racial grievance and hostility towards white people. Anyway, a couple years ago, the Washington Post decided they weren't making enough money in that part of the racial grievance business. Maybe there was too much competition, or maybe they just decided they were, why compete with themselves since there's no shortage of that on the Washington Post. And they sold it to Univision. And Univision put it in the corner with this group that has lots of other alternative media sites there, lots of white hostility, lots of no-Trumpers, lots of stuff that, well, I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of it before. Anyway, but this is The Root. And this is Michael Harriot headline in The Root telling us to stay away from white women, telling black people that. Let's give a listen to what Michael says and why he says it, because it turns out his warning may have just come in the nick of time. Why I'm Afraid of White Women by Michael Harriot. No one ever taught me about Emmett Till. When I was 11 years old, I was sitting in a room filled with black men at my uncle's New Jersey apartment. As they joked around with one another in the bawdy way men are apt to do when they're by themselves.
Hey boys, look what I got here. Hey, where are the white women at?
A traditionally attractive white woman popped up on the television screen. After one of the guys said something about how fine she was, my uncle replied, "Boy, don't mess with white women. You know they will Emmett Till yo ass." Everyone burst out laughing, except me. I had no idea why that joke was remotely funny, but when I got home, I looked up the name Emmett Till in World Book Encyclopedia. I saw the pictures. There was no nuance and very little detail in the 400-word entry. I wouldn't know that some people believed the white woman in the case had lied until a few years later. But I distinctly remember the fact that the article mentioned how they tied him to the fan of a cotton gin before they threw him in the river. I was 11 years old. I was a black boy. I couldn't swim. I lived in the rural Deep South on a dusty road. My family home was across the street from the cotton gin. I do not hate white women. I am afraid of them. Politicon, here I'm going to summarize a little bit. He talks a little bit about Politicon, a political convention, where they had Chelsea Handler and Tommy Lahren. She's the chick from Glenn Beck, who got fired from Glenn Beck for discovering her affection for abortion. Anyway, he goes on to talk about them, saying the only reason anyone would call the entire spectacle even remotely interesting is that skinny blonde white women are always graded on a curve. I think he calls her Broke Becky. Every time Broke Becky gets her pap smear, she has the black president to thank, except she has spent her entire professional career standing in front of a white lynch mob, pointing her finger trying to kill Obamacare. That's why I'm afraid of white women. They will ask you to don a pink hat and march with them. They will readily paint themselves as allies or as fellow oppressed people. They will convince you they are in your corner. They will show you how white feminism intersects with racism. They will explain how white male patriarchy has always been the problem. Then they will slide behind the voting curtain and pull the lever for Donald Trump. They will call the police because you look like you didn't belong there. They will say you raped them because they missed their curfew. They will stand and watch men tie your baby boy to a cotton gin fan and toss him in the river. They will keep their lies a secret for 50 years. That level of duplicitous evil is scarier than any horror movie or demon story could ever inspire. I'm not saying that all white women are like this, but it is demonstrably true that any white woman could do this. At least a few of them have. We saw 53% of them do it. You might think it hyperbolic to compare Emmett Till's accuser to Tomi Lahren, and you are right. Tomi Lahren and the people who pitch lies to uninformed white people for their own monetary or political advantage will ultimately be responsible for more deaths than Carolyn Bryant Donham's lie. Lahren is like the white people who rail against the mothers who use food stamps to feed their children, but are cool with Caucasians benefiting from corporate tax loopholes, farm subsidies, and Medicare. She is the brand of feminist who will talk about the woman's wage gap and glass ceiling, but will remain silent when she finds out she makes more than her black co-worker. They hate affirmative action, but benefit from it the most. Okay, now comes the good part. Lahren is just one of the many white women who are willing to flash their flawless smiles as they stare directly into your eyes and make their lies sound like violin music. They have learned to use their white girl magic to create the illusion that they are not practitioners of sorcery while they ride their brooms off into the sunset. They profit off privilege while warning others about the dangers of trading in it. I do not hate serpents or pit bulls. I am afraid of them. In fact, I am only afraid of poisonous snakes and pit bulls that bite. Unfortunately, I can't tell which ones are harmless and which ones will kill me. So just to be safe, ... Michael Harriot's warning to black people to stay away from white women came just a bit too late for some of the women in these videos.
First of all, Sierra, tell us more about the victim.
Jerry, she was a Summerfield softball player and worked at the local Brookshires here in Homer, Louisiana. She was getting ready to start down the path to her dream. She wanted to become a nurse. She was getting ready to take off for college at Southern Arkansas University. Now those dreams completely shattered. Her killer right here, 39-year-old Deltra Henderson, no stranger to crime. He's been locked up at David Wade Correctional Center since 2001 on 3 different convictions. They are listed right now on your screen: distribution of cocaine, attempted robbery, and aggravated burglary. When he escaped the facility, Henderson kidnapped Carney in her own car, crashed it, took another, and later barricaded himself in this trailer, armed with a gun he found inside. As officers closed in, a gunfight broke. They later found Henderson dead and Carney's body nearby in the woods. Sheriff Ken Bailey did confirm the autopsies revealed that Carney was killed by stabbing Henderson by gunshot wound.
Kay and Mike, since April 2012, Patty Harville's family had been wondering who killed their beloved relative and why. It took the murder of another person to make an arrest in the case.
October 2014, Lexington, Kentucky. A 50-year-old man bludgeoned to death inside an old car wash. 24-year-old Kavian Thomas was one of 3 men charged with murder. Thomas was found guilty and sent to prison. His DNA was sent to the federal DNA database used for linking violent crimes. Then, just last week, a grieving North County family got a call. A DNA match linking Thomas to the DNA at their sister's crime scene. According to charging documents, Thomas entered Patty Harville's Berkeley home in April 2012 and beat her to death. Exactly 5 years and 3 months later, he was charged with first-degree murder.
I was relieved, but I was mad. I'm mad. You know, when I see this face and just wonder, why would this 22-year-old kill her?
I think we have more questions now than we did the day that she was found murdered.
For this large family, 11 siblings, including Patty, the days and weeks since her murder has felt like an eternity.
I did not sleep for the first 2 years. Just anytime I closed my eyes, I seen her laying there.
Now with the suspect in custody, these sisters say they'll rest easier at night. But grieving Patty's loss will never end.
I still don't think we'll have closure because we'll never get the answers that we're asking for.
Jury today convicted a Norristown man for first-degree murder in the 2015 death of an elderly East Mount area woman. The judge immediately sentenced 39-year-old Leroy Wilson to life in prison without parole. The neighborhood handyman beat, stabbed, and robbed 85-year-old Regina Brunner Holmes inside her home.
An arrest in the murder of a North Fort Myers church volunteer. Joanne Leisure was found dead in her condo last week after she didn't show up for Vacation Bible School.
The Lee County Sheriff's Office just announced the arrest within the last hour. NBC2's Ben Henry is live at LCSO headquarters.
Deputies said they had forensic evidence that matched Brett Todd Pleasant, a violent felon who was just released from prison last year. Deputies arrested him today, and they're booking him into jail right now. We did some digging into his criminal history. He was convicted of armed robbery in 1991 and briefly escaped prison in 98. Leisure was murdered in her Parkway condo last week. Her death shocked neighbors and members of her church community. Tonight, LCSO held a brief news conference about the arrest.
I can tell you that Mrs. Leisure was very involved in her church and had devoted her life to helping others.
After an intense round-the-clock investigation, Hedwig Village police say they have arrested the man who murdered longtime resident Janelle Bernard inside her home on July 3rd.
I cannot imagine a more callous, senseless murder than the heinous murder of a defenseless 79-year-old woman.
Police say 55-year-old Michael Susbury confessed and is charged with capital murder.
He has confessed that he actually chose that day to go to her house and to rob her. He knew that she was no threat. He knew that she was an easy target.
Susbury knew Bernard was an easy target because he is the son of Bernard's former housekeeper.
Miss Susbury ended up having to retire about 5 or 6 years ago. And since that time, Miss Bernard has supported her. She's given her a monthly stipend, basically a retirement check since that time. Miss Susbury's sons are the ones who would go to Miss Bernard's house and pick up that check.
So when Susbury showed up at her house, there was no cause for alarm. She invited him in and even offered to drive him home.
Sadly, it was that caring and giving nature that ultimately led to her death.
Police say once inside the home, Susbury pretended to slip and fall.
And when she went down to help him up from the floor, that's when he grabbed her, he headbutted her, he hit her, he knocked her through the ground, and then he pulled out a knife and stabbed her several times. It doesn't appear as though he has ever done anything worthwhile since he has been alive on this earth.
Now they hope he pays the ultimate price for this unspeakable act.
Boyfriend called her selfless. Tonight, friends and family gathered to remember the woman killed while she was simply celebrating her birthday.
Everybody was a friend. It didn't matter who you were, and she treated people with respect.
Investigators say a carjacking suspect gunned down 31-year-old Krista Eberol when she tried to run.
A Warren County judge handed down the death sentence to 43-year-old Terry Froman Thursday. The judge followed a recommendation of a jury who found Froman guilty of all charges, including aggravated murder and kidnapping. He fatally shot his ex-girlfriend, 34-year-old Kimberly Thomas, in September 2014 as he drove on I-75 near Middletown. Prosecutors say Froman became vengeful when Thomas ordered him out of her Mayfield, Kentucky home. They say Froman abducted Thomas after killing her 17-year-old son. Froman's attorney said during the trial evidence would show mitigating factors.
Yeah, Michelle, this happened around 10 o'clock last night. A big break for Denver police who are trying to crack a murder case, but a terrifying experience for the woman who lives in this home.
Neighbors in this quiet Torrance community will tell you hardly anything ever happens here.
We had one burglary 25 years ago.
But last night, a dramatic break in that peacefulness. The 73-year-old woman who lives in this house heard someone breaking in. She picked up her phone and called a neighbor.
Said, I think somebody's in my house, and can you help me?
Christine Watson is that woman's daughter. She says her mom tried to trigger her car alarm.
She got her car keys to try to set off her alarm, and they were in the bathroom. They knocked her out at that point, and she doesn't remember anything except for she saw two men, and then she was taken to the hospital.
Fortunately, the woman suffered only minor injuries, but police say a different neighbor had already called 911 to report suspicious activity. Torrance police rolled up before the intruders took off.
Officers arrived there and they observed two males exiting the residence, and they also heard screams of a woman. Right now, they're being charged with home invasion robbery. We're also investigating a residential burglary that took place prior to this home invasion.
But last night's home invasion, even more disturbing. Investigators in Denver today announcing the 17-year-old arrested here is DeMarco Blake.
For the first time tonight, we have these photos of Thompson that family members shared with us. Also learning tonight that she was in fact a mother, as police confirmed that the infant in the backseat of the car during the shooting was Thompson's and that the child was only 6 months old.
Trina and Michael Kuznick were found shot to death inside the car dealership that the married couple ran together. And that's just a few weeks after Trina Kuznick went on camera with an uncanny assessment of the crime happening in her neighborhood.
You can't get the police here. There's either not enough or there's too much crime or something's going on to the fact where we can't get any help or support over here.
It's a March 22nd interview News 5 investigator Sarah Buttison conducted with Trina Kuznick, the owner of Mr. Cars on East 185th Street in Cleveland.
And the glass was just everywhere.
Kuznick complaining about police response times after her business was broken into. Police showed up 6 hours after she called for help.
I mean, 6 hours. Imagine being in a car accident and waiting 6 hours for the police to come. I mean, it's just not acceptable. And I think that we need to really take a good look at it before our city just crumbles apart.
Fast forward, and it's Kuznick's family and longtime friends now crumbling. Saturday, police tape surrounded the family business that was just about to celebrate its 40th anniversary. Cleveland police said the Kuznick's 19-year-old son discovered his parents' bodies after he had trouble reaching them.
I've known this family over 30 years. I watched him work. I watched Mike work on this lot with his dad. And to lose your life, his life, over what? Over nothing.
And I called 911 and said my building's been broken into.
Kuznick's assessment of neighborhood crime back in March eerily described what would happen to her and her husband just weeks later.
How is it right that people can just come and do this to us and there's nobody to stop them? It's like the Wild West. It's like East Cleveland's creeping in over here.
Michael Harriet was a little bit surprised that he had never learned about Emmett Till in school. That's because every child, white and black, learns about Emmett Till in school today. And they learn that this relentless white racism and relentless black victimization didn't start with Emmett Till, and it's going on today. That, of course, is the greatest myth, the greatest fairy tale of our lifetime, the hoax of black victimization. So why don't we run through a few more stories of black on female murder, violence, rape, assault, burglary, and every other kind of violent crime you could think of. And we're not going to go back 62 years to Emmett Till. We're going to go back most of the stuff was in the last 30 to 60 days. Why don't we start with Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom? However horrific the story of Emmett Till, this is Emmett Till times 1,000. I mean, these two young white college kids were, I think, both recently out of college in their early 20s. They look like they kind of went together. They were on a date one night and they ran into four fellas and one of their lovely ladies. I won't even give you the details what happened other than to say they tortured her for, I think, 2 days, and they tortured him for 5 days. There was pliers, there was fire, there was beatings, there was stuff that I wouldn't put on this channel even if I had it right in front of me. That's not isolated. For every one Emmett Till, there are 100 victims, 1,000 victims of black violence, just as horrific, just as nasty, and a hell of a lot more recent. You know, one of the things that people forget about Emmett Till is we don't hear too much about the father of Emmett Till. We hear a lot about the mother because she was the one who put him in an open casket, bruised and battered, so the world could see what the white racist had done to her child. Fair enough. What about the story of Lewis Till? Lewis met the mother of Emmett Till, and he, Emmett Till's grandfather, maternal grandfather, tried to run Lewis Till off. He didn't want anything to do with him. No good. Lewis Till persisted and persisted until finally he ended up marrying the mother of Emmett Till. Soon after, Emmett Till's mom found that Emmett Till's dad had been running around, as they used to say back in the day. Not just with one chick, with a lot of chicks. She did not like that. They got into a fight. Yes, it was mutual combat. He ended up winning that round by choking her out and almost killing her. She got a restraining order on him. Came time for the trial. He was found guilty, and they stood in front of a judge, and the judge said, "Listen, son, you have two choices. One, you can go to jail. Or two, you can join the United States Army and go fight our foes." Next thing you know, Lewis Till was in the army. Next thing you know, he was in Italy. Next thing you know, he was being accused of raping two women, Italian women, and killing the third. He was found guilty and sentenced to hang by the neck until he was dead, which is what they did to him in 1945. His body is buried in Italy. He achieved a small amount of notoriety when Ezra Pound, who was sitting in the same prison as Emmett Till, he was the English poet who took the, I forget if he was on the Nazi side or the Italian side. He took the side against the English. They didn't like that. They slapped him out of prison. Anyway, he mentioned him in 2 lines in one of his more famous poems. That's also part of the story of Emmett Till. There are so many stories here. Why don't we just run through a few of the headlines with a few of the pictures? This is all black on female crime. This guy's from Flint, Michigan. The fellas broke into his house, and they went upstairs to attack his wife. He went upstairs. They killed him. There's another white woman killed by a black person, her former boyfriend. He burned her. Oh, we got some people down there in the University of South Carolina hunting white students. Anybody ever hear of Allie Switzer? 6 of the fellows from Richmond were recently arrested for killing this Allie Switzer because she did not like getting ripped off in a drug deal. Up in Maine, how about up in Maine? Guy walks in on his mom. One of the fellas had a hammer. Reginald Kimbrough down in Austin, Texas killed these 2 lovely ladies very recently. How about a nun? What's up with beating up nuns in churches? How about this art teacher? What's up with that? This black guy killed that art teacher. And this guy was killed trying to defend his family against those 3 guys. I mention that because that wife's life is as destroyed and ruined as if she herself was the victim. Check out this dude with the X on his face. For some reason, the lovely lady, white girl, didn't want to go out with him. He beat her up real bad, almost killed her. I feel you, brother. My lovely ladies don't like X's on my face either. This chick here was killed by a couple of black people. No particular reason. That's really that important. Is there really a reason? Remember this story down in Washington, D.C.? She was down with the cause. They killed her. Another brutal predator down in Hernando County. Tushawn Brown killed Lauren Deas. See, I don't even remember this chick's name. All I remember is she was killed by a black person. Anybody remember why or how? Or are they all melting together? How about Taliaferro Thompson? He killed Ashlyn Higgins. This lady posted this on her Facebook just a couple of days ago. I don't think, this 20-year-old white girl got the crap beat out of her by that black guy with the cool glasses. Remember this famous quote, Mr. Harriot from Eldridge Cleaver glorifying rape? Maybe they were thinking about that when these fellas at the water park beat the hell out of that white girl for no damn reason whatsoever other than they could. These are all recent stories, Michael Harriot. I don't see any stories of white women killing black men, unarmed black men. Your favorite phrase. You know, the fact is, white women have been buying into the greatest lie of our generation for a very long time, much to their detriment, their health, their very life. I mean, even you have to laugh at this crazy story out of Baltimore.
Well, Vic, Sarah Hughes had just parked here Sunday night when she was attacked, beaten, and saw her saxophone, her car, and her money stolen away. It happened Sunday night. Music teacher and musician Sarah Hughes was invited to play her saxophone at a jam session in Charles Village. She had just parked her car in the 200 block of East 23rd Street when a teenager ran up.
We just opened the door and said, "Give me your keys, give me your car," and I said, "You don't have to do this."
She says a second teen ran up and started punching her.
After that started happening, I was like, I'm a good person. You know, that's the second thing that came to my mind to start saying. And I kind of just continued saying it.
Sarah says she begged for her saxophone, but they said no. Posting on Facebook, she asks for help finding her horn.
There's so much support out there. A lot of people are calling pawn shops on my behalf.
But she's also getting negative feedback because she posted that as a teacher, she would like to reach out to the teens who carjacked her.
Laughing at me because I want to talk to them. People are so tired of it, of not being able to just walk around where they live and feel safe. I get that. But I'm not about to, look at the kid who was punching me and just say, "You deserve the electric chair." No. This kid has obviously, been through his own battles, I'm sure.
But the kids have not been found. And that's the heart of a teacher speaking there.
This Asian woman had much the same story. She was in a car parking lot. One of the fellas and his lovely lady came up and beat the hell out of her with brass knuckles. This woman, if you see her real picture, I'll see if I can dig it up, is a beautiful woman. Not anymore. I don't know for how much longer. But here's the punchline. She had the same reaction as the woman before, the woman from Baltimore, the fool with the saxophone. This woman, after taking a beating, after squirting the black person in the face with mace, she sat down in front of the TV cameras and said she would like to meet her attacker so she could ask him why. Well, I think, Michael, why don't you tell her why? I think you know. So I know you want black guys to leave white women alone. But for some reason, some white women, women who are down with the cause, they feel very maternal towards lots of black people, especially criminals. I mean, what about that story on the BART train up in the Bay Area a couple weeks ago? Well, the attack happened about 2-3 months ago. 40 to 60 black people rampaged through the station, went into the train, beat the hell out of a woman, stole her purse, and got away. And it turns out they have video of the whole thing that they still haven't released. But the only reason they're not releasing the video is because this chick, she thinks it might hurt the sensibilities of black people in the region because everybody involved in that thing was black, as I reported the day after it happened, because a whole bunch of people told me it was. Does that surprise you, Michael? I mean, some white people are just crazy about ignoring the unbelievably elevated level of black violence against white people and weak white people like white women. I mean, what about these fools at the Unitarian Church near where I live? They're just like the Unitarian Church in every city in America. 2 years ago, they had a rally to support Black Lives Matter. They started it at the edge of the ghetto, then they went right into the ghetto, and some of their people who were marching got the crap beat out of them. Next year, they wised up and had the same march, same rally up at their church, near their church, in the suburbs. It's funny. I did a video. I've done a couple videos. Every time they have a video, do a rally, I have a video pointing out one fact. There are no people at this Black Lives Unitarian rally. Why do you suppose that is, Michael? Because I have a hunch. I don't think black people like these Unitarian fools any more than a lot of conservative white people do. They're useful, but even you must know they're idiots. Same story on the bus up in San Francisco. A bunch of black people got on the bus, dragged the white chick off, beat the hell out of her. Nobody knows nothing. No, there was no little sign, no little pictures. Nobody in the paper is going, yeah, that was a bunch of black people. That seems to be happening around here a lot. Yeah, they're attacking women a lot. Michael, I was a little bit surprised to learn, I don't think you're a member of the National Association of Black Journalists. Hell, they would love you down there. Why aren't you a member? It can only cost what? 60, 70, 80 bucks a year. You go to the convention, you meet lots of other people who are down with the cause. But it must be a little weird because, basically everybody you meet is telling the same story. They're the victims of white racism, and that's the only story they want to write. But their big bad editors back home only wants them writing that every 2 or 3 or 4 stories instead of every single one. I know that probably gets a little boring for you, but you ought to check it out, Michael. I think they'd like you down there. You'd find a lot of kindred spirits down there. I mean, they got a project that's perfect for you. How about this? Journalists Nationwide inspire black males, aim to change media and societal narratives. So we know this whole black criminality thing is wildly out of proportion, and the National Association of Black Journalists, your compadres, your soulmates, they don't want to change the behavior. They want to change how it's reported. I mean, that's pretty slick when you think about it. Hey, Michael, did you see this story out of California? 75% of black people in California schools can't read. They can't read to the state minimum. That means they can't read. You think the minimum's too high out there? Same way, it's the same way all over the country. What's up with that, Michael? There's another kind of racist plot. Except this time they have all the black teachers, the black school boards, the black principals in on it. Like they do in Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, where the results are equally dismal. You keep talking about how you don't want black people to hang around with white women because, they're bad actors or whatever. Hey, when you get to be 62 years old and you're single as I am, well, I've had my own issues with the lovely white ladies, but I never tried to stay away from them or anything. They seem to be staying away from me more than the other way around. But to be fair, Shannon Sharpe also issued the same kind of warning a few months ago on his show.
Because, guys, if you don't have money and you want something nice, either I got one or two ways. I sell drugs or I go steal it or I go take it. Those are my two options because I see Rolexes and I see Mercedes and I see nice things and I want them. But I don't have a job and I don't have opportunity and means to get it. So if I want it, I'm going to go get it.
Isn't that amazing? That a black person can go on national TV, a member of the National Football League Hall of Fame, look in the camera and say, black people, it's okay if you go rob and kill white people to get your Mercedes and Rolex watches. Isn't that amazing? And so, people I just don't think believe Shannon, because if they did, if white people really believed what Shannon was saying, which I believe is a lot closer to the truth than most people do, we'd see as wide as the gap between the races is now, it would go from being kind of wide into being the Grand Canyon. So now all you have to say about all of this criminality, so wildly out of proportion, so impossible to ignore. You're telling me that black people should stay away from the people they've been targeting for all these years because they're such soft targets? I guess that's all, when you say that happened tomorrow, all you would have left is black people going out with black women. I think our good friend on this channel, Tommy Sotomayor, might have a thing or two to say about that because he's not down with the lovely black ladies. And you better believe that when the stuff he says about them, that definitely makes the black kids angry.